Hello there and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with the community experts about their life journeys and learn from each other. And today we have a conversation with Milly Tamati, a chief generalist, tinkerer, a square peg in a round hole, a great adventurer, and just an amazing and inspiring person. So hello, Milly.
Oh, I love that introduction. Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
That's exactly how I feel about you. And let's start with the beginning. Tell me the story of a pants-free bums photo tradition.
Of the what?
Pants-free bums photos.
Hands-free bombs photos? I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's so fun. Yeah, sometimes I'm asking questions, people like, oh my God, what are you talking about?
Where,
But
how far has he dug back?
basically, it's always grabs your attention when you see such photos of people with their pants off and showing their white
Is
asses.
this on a boat in Croatia by any chance?
Yes.
Oh dear, yes. I mean, that was a chapter. That was a chapter of life. So basically, I was working as a tour guide for many years, from about 2014 up until like maybe 5 or 6 years later. And in that time, I guided thousands of people on tours across 15 or so different countries. And one of the countries, the one I spent the most time in, was Croatia. So we would basically like sail the Dalmatian coast, and it was pretty wild. Like I would have pretty large groups of often Australians. I think I know the picture you're talking about, and from memory, that was a group of just like Australians and probably a few Kiwis sprinkled in there. And yeah, pants down, bums out, like the typical "we're in Europe" photo.
Have you seen the Euro Trip movie?
No.
Okay, so I believe you will like it.
Yeah, okay. I'll have to check it out.
Okay, so you live on an isle of Rhea with a population of 170 people. Do you know
Yeah.
everyone?
I know everyone probably by face. Like when you walk around the island in Raze, like your arm is just constantly up because you have to wave constantly. And like let's say you go to the community store, you can never duck in for like a 5 minute thing. You have to allow at least 20-25 minutes to go in and out because you will have to stop and you will have to speak to someone. So the population does increase quite a bit in summer. So I would say at the moment, like I don't know everyone, but I have a pretty fairly good knowledge of everyone on the island.
Who is the community builder there?
It's actually a good question. I think I've learned so much about building community from living in such a small community. I think there's like a certain kind of almost responsibility that comes with being in a small community, like 170 people. You have to contribute. You have to be the one that's driving like change. And if you want to do something, you just have to like kind of do it. So, like, for example, we've got 170 people, and I think we have 9 or 10 different community like boards. So like there's
Mm,
the hall board where we have a lot of like community owned assets. And so basically like everyone more or less sits on a board, and there's this like there's a real sense of contribution, volunteering, and also just kind of getting stuck in and doing things. Like we don't have, for example, we have no police. So the
mm.
island is quite self-governing in a sense. Like if there's a problem, you just sort it out on the island. And on the other side, like if you ever need anything, like if I needed something at 3 a.m., I know there's probably 20 people who I could call and would pick up the phone.
Oh wow. It's a really great way of caring about each other. And
Mm-hmm.
so like living in these big cities, I don't know that many people to call at 3 a.m. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's the beauty of it. And what is your favorite board to sit on?
So I sit on the I'm in the board of directors for the hall, which is actually where I'm calling from right now. So the reason I joined that is because I see the community hall as a hub. as a real opportunity, as a place. It's actually the sole place on the island that we can bring people together. So, like, for example, happening just downstairs right now is a craft fair. There's like a joke on Raze that basically every event, any event, is just full of cake. So I'm having a late breakfast today, saving myself, because I know that as soon as I finish this podcast, as soon as I step downstairs, there's going to be copious amounts of cake.
What is your favorite cake?
Sticky toffee pudding.
Got it. And you know exactly who is creating this cake the best in the city.
Yeah, like for example, there's a woman, Anne, and no one else does meringues because Anne does meringues, and you cannot beat Anne's meringues. You just don't try. So like, yeah, I never actually thought I knew that in detail, but turns out.
Have you ever tried to do that?
Meringues?
I mean, beat Anne's meringues.
No, I wouldn't. Like the audacity of, Anne is a local. She's been here for decades. You can't just move to Raze and be like, I'm going to create meringues. Like that is how conflict starts.
Got it. Local power. Okay. Yeah. It's not so diverse, It's not that equal. So.
There's no equal opportunity when it comes to Raze meringues.
Got it. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your parents. Who are they?
Oh gosh, I don't know if you want to dig into this.
Up to you.
I have no contact with my parents. It's quite a sad story.
Should we go deeper or should we skip?
Well, do you know what? I think it's a fair point, and I've been through many years of therapy to get to this, and I think it's actually when people ask me about my parents, and I say, "Oh, actually, sorry to make this awkward, but like, I don't have any contact." I actually think it's important to talk about, because even though honestly I had a little bit of a crappy upbringing, but because of that, I left New Zealand, and because of that, I knew that I had no one else to rely on. I had to figure out how to make it on my own. I had to figure out how to move, how to make money, how to be happy in an independent adult who wasn't going to repeat the same generational patterns. And so even though I've definitely had times where I'm like, oh God, that was really not a great hand that I was dealt, I'm actually okay with it, because I think if I had had it easy as a kid, I think if my parents had, if it was a nice, easy childhood, maybe I wouldn't be where I am. Maybe I wouldn't have lent into being a generalist. I think there's definitely like a link there. And maybe I wouldn't have spent the last 12 years traveling.
You never know, you never know. And I'm always like, oh, so if I made this, or if my parents made that, what my life would have. And then like, who cares, because like
it is what it is.
Unfortunately or luckily, we don't have a time machine. So like, and I, like I had this conversation with folks who have like elderly parents, and it's always like, like they are trying to remember their mistakes in your upbringing, and they are trying to, I'm not talking about all this illness and all this stuff, it's for sure, but also they are trying to, oh my God, I was a bad parent, and they are telling it to you. And I was like, why are you telling it to me? Like, I don't really care about, so.
Exactly. I think it's just like, life isn't always going to be super kind, whether we're talking about parents or upbringing or location, or just like bad stuff happening is kind of just a fact of life. And I've come to realize that almost in every case, some of like the most funny or successful or like resilient or interesting people I know had like, not great stuff happen to them. They had some adversity. So I don't know. I think it's character building.
Yeah, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
Right? Yes.
So Tell me about yourself. What is the first childhood memory that comes to your mind right now?
I have a very early and one of my favorite childhood memories. So I didn't have a great kind of start with my parents, but what I did have was incredible grandparents, my nan and my pa, who honestly I credit them for me not going completely off the railway, and they showed me just like endless love, and I think I really credit them for everything. And one of my earliest memories, I grew up on a farm, like real farm girl in New Zealand. And my pa, my grandfather, he was milking this cow. And it was like back in, the early 90s, he was milking it by hand. And he turned to me and he said, "Hey, Milly, open your mouth." And I would just do whatever he said. If he said jump, I would say how high. And so I opened my mouth and he squirted me in the face. I completely did not expect it. I remember the shock with this like fresh, warm cow's milk. And I just remember thinking it was the funniest thing ever. And the memory, I think it was so shocking. It's like ingrained into me, and it's really stuck with me.
Well, how do you feel about cow's milk since then?
It's a good question. I do prefer oat. I think I like rebelled when I left New Zealand. I like turned vegetarian. I was like vegetarian for a very, very long time. I've actually only just started eating local meat. So we have like a really bad deer problem on Razay. And so recently I've started eating venison because I couldn't think of a reason not to. I was like, they have lived wonderful lives. They are processed locally. There's like no food miles. And man, they're pretty delicious.
I think that you could just start with this,
Exactly. That's the way my brain works, like going through all I tend to overanalyze everything.
the best bio product. So it's like grown up in the wild and like
yeah, wild game. Delicious.
Just a random question. Do you like Matthew McConaughey?
Oh, weird. My cousin sent me his book once. I think it's called Green Light, which gave me an insight. I mean, Matthew McConaughey, do I like him? I don't dislike him. I would say I would be quite indifferent to him. I've enjoyed him in some films, but the book did give me a bit of a deeper insight. I always love that when you read something about someone and you just get to see like a different side of them. So I would say like, yeah, I like Matthew McConaughey. Why? Is he coming on the podcast?
Right now, Matthew McConaughey, welcome. Maybe one day, I don't know. But for now, like what was this insight you found in this book?
Ooh. It was quite a few years ago that I read it. I just remember realizing that there were more layers to Matthew McConaughey than being an actor. Especially a lot of his acting is in like kind of rom-coms. So you just have this tiny little insight into being like, oh, all right, he's like the rom-com guy. But he's like, I think he's quite deep into personal growth and reflection and development. And I just was like, wow, there's some layers to Matthew McConaughey.
I'm asking you because I also read this book and I don't know. I went to a Ukrainian shop, definitely in Ukraine, and there are mostly books in Ukrainian, and there was like this green light book in English, and and our government gave us kind of like bonus for being vaccinated. And
really?
It was like, they tried to motivate people. And if you like get vaccinated, you had like, it's not a big amount. It was like, I don't know $50 or something like that.
Okay.
But still, you could use this money, and it's not like you could use them to buy food or to go to the cinema, and you could use those money to support kind of like
local
businesses, like
businesses and
buy books,
yeah,
go to theaters and all this stuff. And I was like in this bookshop and I saw this, oh, green light, Matthew McConaughey in English. I'm buying it. And
yeah,
and the funniest thing that I thought about it, I was like, he's just sharing his life.
yeah.
That's exactly what other people do, but everyone's like reading this book just because of he is a great actor, and
Mm,
because of he is a famous. And I was like,
mhm,
but he's sharing the same story that everyone shares. It's not
mhm.
like, a key to gain overnight success or
No,
key
not at
to
all.
become an awesome actor or something like that.
Yeah,
He was just talking about his life, and I was like, oh wow, is it even possible that people can just talk about their lives, not
yeah,
like, highlighting their career and
yeah.
all this stuff?
It
And
was very human.
I was like, yeah, okay, nice to
Yeah.
know, nice to know, nice to know that celebrities are also human.
You should send Matthew McConaughey a message and say that you spent your $50 like incentive from the Ukrainian government on his book, and then with a little plug for the podcast and then a little clip here and be like, we're talking, Matthew, if you're watching, come join us.
Oh wow, it's a great. And you know what? I will do it. I will
Do it.
definitely
I
do it.
believe that you will do it, Yuri, because you
Woohoo!
are a doer.
Thank you very much, Milly. After these words, definitely.
Yeah.
Also, I saw your message that since you was 21, your life motto has been, if it's going to make a great story, do it.
Mm,
So
yeah.
what happened at 21?
Good question. So 21, I was in New Zealand. I was just finishing up a teaching degree. I really don't know why I chose teaching. I think it was just because I didn't know what else to do. And I felt the pressure to go to university. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a teacher. And 3 years, coming to the end of that degree, I realized that I did not want to spend my life in four walls in a classroom. And I just had this burning desire to get out of New Zealand. As I said, a bit of a rough childhood. I was like, the world could be my blank page. I could be whoever I want to be outside of New Zealand. I can start again. And with my nan and my pa's blessing, and strong encouragement, they were like, we love you, go, get out, like get off the farm, go, go, go. So thank God for them. I booked a one-way flight to Berlin. And that was the beginning of, I feel like, the whole adventure of my 20s. And that was where it started. Like, I had absolutely no plan. I was a little naive farm girl who, I'm not joking, Yuri, I remember arriving in Berlin and I didn't know how the doorbells worked. We don't have doorbells where I'm from. Like, it's just like, we don't even really
Yeah.
lock the door. And I remember going to a job interview being like, I don't know how this bell system works. And I was like, everyone's speaking German. Like, just like night, I was really, really young, like a young 21-year-old. And I guess I was like, okay, I don't know much, but what I do know is that good stories often lead to good things. And if
Yeah.
they don't lead to a good thing, they'll lead to a good story. And that's a good thing. So I started chasing the good stories. And if it was an opportunity that I think, that could be kind of interesting, I would just not think too much about it. And I would just say yes.
Have you ever thought about writing a book?
I have. And in COVID, I actually started drafting one. And do you know what I found is like, I don't love writing about myself,
Okay.
which is quite strange because I love writing. I feel really confident writing. It's probably my favorite way of communicating. I love poetry. I write songs. Like I adore writing as a medium. But when I started writing this like book, and I was like, I don't know what it is. I think I could write it about someone else quite
Yeah.
happily, but there
Yeah.
was something about sharing my own like really details that I don't know, it didn't quite gel. So never say never, but there are stories for a book.
Yeah, and I kind of feel what you are talking about because it's so easy, at least for me, to highlight somebody.
Hmm.
And it's always that's so much hard to, talk about myself.
Yeah.
It feels like a little selfish, like
Yeah, or just a little uncomfortable. I don't know what it is. And maybe this is where we are attracted to building communities because that's what we do. We're like amplifying others and showcasing others and telling others stories and bringing others together. So it's not like all the focus on us.
And I know I followed Dwayne The Rock Johnson a little, and it was my goal, and it's still kind of my goal. It's not like it's gone, but it's somewhere back there to
Yeah.
have conversation with him too.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
I saw his book, like autobiography, but it was written by an author, and
Okay.
I know how it works. So basically, this person just came to Rock
Okay.
and interviewed him
Uh-huh.
and wrote a book, and then it was like autobiography book by Dwayne The Rock Johnson, but literally
Uh-huh.
it was written by another
Someone
person. And
else.
I feel like it's a really good way because sometimes people cannot, like, I don't know, at least many people from the community where I know, they are
Hmm.
so humble and they are so like, oh,
Hmm.
I don't know what to talk about myself, even though they are amazing, but
Yeah.
others knows that.
Yeah.
And I feel like in this moment when somebody like talking to you, asking you questions, you can be just yourself and
Yeah.
sharing your story. And it's not like you think about what you share, you just do it.
Yeah. Exactly. I could actually see you being really good at that. I think you're a brilliant question asker and you make people feel really comfortable. And I think those are two skills that would be like essential to this kind of role where you're like, I can tell your story. I can ask the questions that will tease out your story. And then you can kind of like make it like a collaborative endeavor.
I feel like, it will be one more thing that I will do. First is a message to Matthew McConaughey, and second, I was really thinking about creating a book out of community life conversations because there are so
Ooh,
amazing stories people shared, and it's not
yeah.
like I will write a book, but
Yeah.
it's like I will just share what.
Compile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it will be collaborative, and the only one thing I need is time. So
That's
the
it.
only one thing, the
Let
only
me
one
know when you find it.
I if I knew,
Yeah.
if only I knew. But yeah, let's go back to you. And why Berlin?
I have no idea. I think I was 21 and Googled like cool place to live, Europe,
Cool place
and
to live.
cool place to live. That was also a lot of my strategy. I remember when I was living, so I went from Berlin to Northern Ireland, and I remember my Google search there was get paid, travel, Europe. I was really good at the keywords, and I mean, in both of those searches, they paid off. Both of them led. One led to living in Berlin for 365 days, my full
Wow.
visa.
Wow.
And then the next get paid travel Europe led me to moving to Croatia and starting this whole like chapter as a tour guide.
I can imagine. What was the funniest story that you had as a tour guide? Except for
What
those photos.
what kind of rating is this podcast? I guess everyone's over 18.
Explicit content.
Okay, my favorite, I should say, I don't know if favorite's a good word to use. One of my favorite stories was it was my second tour ever. So I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I was completely winging it.
It's already a good start.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I don't know. I had 30 people on this tour. I'd taken them out to this bar called Boogie Jungle, which is on a little island called Korčula. And Boogie Jungle is like an open air bar. So you're literally partying like in the jungle. It's super cool. And there was this young girl. She was probably like 22, my age, to be fair, back then. And she met a boy on the dance floor. And she decided that, we're going to skip all of the dating. We're going to skip that. and we're just going to go and we're going to try and have sex up on a cliff edge, which not advisable. It's not, explicitly said, like, do not have sex on a cliff. It's implied. And anyway, they ended up rolling off the cliff and falling about 6 meters. She fell first and he landed on top of her, and she broke her back. It was pretty, like, it's funny to look back on now because she is 100% recovered. I've met up with her multiple times since. But the fear, I was actually back, I just arrived back to the boat, and I remember getting this phone call being like, you need to get to the hospital. We're on a tiny island. It was a room with 4 Croatian nurses. And I just remember hearing the screaming. It was like chaos. And I was like, okay, I'm on my way. Adrenaline is like kicking in. And when I arrived, have you ever seen the movie Carrie, where they pour like the pig's blood on, it's great. Like,
I didn't see, but I can imagine.
She looked like that. She was drenched. She'd split her head open. And it was my first time that I really had to be like, there is no playbook here. I just need to figure this out. I need to prioritize this girl's safety. I need to get everyone else calm, because as you know, when people are like at a bar and a crisis happens, half of the thing you can do is just keeping everyone calm. Like, and I was like, it's fine, guys. It's everyone leave, go. I've got this. So yeah, rolling off the cliff whilst having sex and breaking your back on my second tour. That was one of them.
I can imagine that after this, most likely she will never have sex on cliffs or go to every cliff of the world. And you never know.
Yeah, it might be her new thing. But I was obviously in touch with her for years afterwards, and she ended up meeting up with the boy again back in
this
England.
Boy, yes.
Yeah, who broke his nose. She broke her back. He broke his nose. And I was like, please get married. Like, that would be the happiest ending to the story. But yeah, there was no chemistry, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you never know, life is still going on. So.
Yeah, that's true. I'll have to check in again 8 years later.
Also, you wrote that you became comfortable in your discomfort. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, there's been many examples of this, I think, over my career. I think the trend, the thread that has gone through is that I'm constantly doing things I don't really know how to do. And that can be, and I now realize this is a generalist trait, just being in this, being really comfortable with ambiguity. So there's been a lot of I think in every kind of transition, every new job, new role, there's been an element of total discomfort because I am new at the skill. I'm learning that skill from scratch. Community building is a great example. 2 years ago, I didn't have any formal community building experience, especially in the digital world. And for most of my career, I was doing things in real life, with people, right? And it was only during COVID that I made that total switch to this digital world. And although there's a lot of transferable skills, it is very much it's almost like a new world that you have to navigate. So career-wise, I just think that's the rule. That's not the exception. Building a business, you're constantly just I don't really know what I'm doing. I hope this works. Can I say that? Because that's the truth.
Yeah, exactly. If it would be a lie, most likely not. But yeah. Since it's the truth, you can definitely do it. And still, is there anything you still have discomfort that you are not that comfortable doing about?
I mean, yeah, all the time. I think, is anyone comfortable all the time? I feel I'm very like, I do a lot of like self-work. So I've been in therapy, and still in therapy, constantly being like, all right, what can I do to not even make myself better, but know myself better? I think we're not taught how to do that. And that can be quite an uncomfortable, and on the one side it can be really uncomfortable because it's almost like meeting your true self, but on the other side it's completely liberating, because only when you get to actually meet and understand your patterns and your behaviors that you can then actually be like empowered to change them or tweak them or whatever it might be. And yeah, so I feel like in work, yeah, I mean, discomfort is, especially as a solo founder, it's probably an everyday occurrence. But then also in life, like just navigating, like, how do you balance all this, like relationships plus career plus like keeping fit plus like gardening? There's like all these plates that you're constantly having to balance, and that can be uncomfortable, especially when one of the plates inevitably falls.
Have you ever heard about regression?
Tell me.
It's when you try to discover who you were in your previous lives.
Oh, no, I haven't. Have you? That sounds interesting.
Not yet. I've heard a lot, but I feel like it's some kind of hypnosis, and you kind of, there is I believe in that a person is always reincarnating in another person, and that you have kind of eternal soul, and it's just keep moving from like one level to another. Also like learning, and like we are coming to this world usually having some lives before. And some people, once again, I have no ideas if it's true. I've never tried it. And I don't know if it's good to try it at home,
Warning.
Yes. But the funny thing that some people told that they kind of went to this regression stuff, and they kind of found how they died in previous lives, and who they were and how they died, so they kind of could understand what is their past, like what they have to work on.
I think that's interesting. Because I believe that to be true in this life. So, for example, like I believe that when you're born, you are inheriting your parents and your grandparents and their grandparents, all of the traumas, the learnings, the lessons. I believe that that is true. I think thinking about it in a past life context, I've never really thought about it like that. But I don't know, like
one more level to discover yourself somewhere in the future.
One more plate to spin.
By the way, have you ever counted how many plates do you have?
Oh, I'd be afraid to. That would be an uncomfortable exercise. I reckon you could fall most things in life into maybe like 5 categories, like 5 plates, kind of like we all have to work. I would say work relationships. So whether that's romantic, friendships, like who is there, who's supporting you. Some kind of like something that lights you up. So that could be your hobbies. It could be going to the gym. For me, it's my newfound gardening love. What else? I think mental health. I don't think that's entirely separate from physical, but for me, I need to look at them almost as 2 separate things so that it doesn't slip. Maybe 4 plates. What would you say?
Oh my God. Definitely family, like wife, kid, dogs, all this stuff. And I feel like even though I have just 2 dogs and 1 kid, I feel like I have 3 kids.
How old are the dogs?
It's a hard question. I know how old is my son. He's 11, but
he's 11.
I feel like it's almost like a grown-up man already. But
wow.
And Dogs. It's like I believe that one is 2 years old and
Uh-huh.
another is somewhere like 5 or 6.
Okay.
So I'm bad in there. I don't even know their birthday dates.
I
So
don't think they do either.
I'm a bad parent, for them. But my wife really knows their birth dates, and
Yeah, that's fine. As
she's
long as
always
one of
like,
you.
"How we will celebrate their birthdays?" And I will, we won't, you know, and we never do. So basically,
Yeah.
that's exactly how it is. And definitely, it's I would say it's the first thing is parenting and relationship. Second
Yeah.
is definitely work and talking to people.
Yeah.
Third is finding who the hell am I
Yeah.
in this world, and trying to understand like where to move
Mm-hmm.
next.
Yeah.
And the fourth that I would say got recently, it's afraid of what will happen next.
Mm.
Because I was living in my country for 33 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then the war started, and then I was like, okay,
Yeah. Now
nice.
what?
Now,
Yeah. Yeah. It's I can't even imagine, to be honest, what you and your family have been through. It's such a difficult situation to be in, but I think it does come back to that, like, what doesn't kill you does make you stronger. And it will open doors in ways that you may have not had if the war hadn't started. It's just a different, like, reality of life.
and previously I heard this saying, do not have $100, but have 100 friends. And
Hmm.
I've
Wow.
never taken it personally. And
Hmm.
like, it's good to have 100 friends and $100. But then I was like, yeah, that's exactly how it works. As
Mm,
long as you have good people around you, as long as you know how to connect with other people,
yeah.
you will be okay in any circumstances.
Yeah. It's so
So
true.
that's what I'm trying to always say to people, like, always, always, always make friends, help
Yeah.
people, like create these connections, and you'll be good anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the constant that you can rely on. Like, as long as we're here, there's probably going to be other people here. And honestly, I think that the world is just uncertain. Like, from everything from war to climate change, to our governments, there is so much uncertainty. I think you probably are experiencing that at a higher level than most. But that's kind of the only guarantee at the moment, is that we don't know how the next 5, 10, 20 years are going to roll out. So if you can keep that circle of people who you trust, who they trust you, like, that is worth, it has a huge inherent value.
Yeah, definitely. And I even not afraid to go like all over the world, because
Yeah.
almost everywhere I have some friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so
Completely.
it's the best thing for me. And talking about gardening, what is your favorite plant in your garden?
That's a horrible question, Yuri. That's like being like, what is your favorite child? Uh,
Exactly.
Okay, I will answer it in a way that's going to be cheating. And I'll tell you a little story about why it's my favorite. So I started reading this book. I've been described as a ferocious reader, which is accurate. And I was reading this book called Braiding Sweetgrass.
Hmm.
And it's basically looks at indigenous knowledge about plants, but through a scientific lens.
Hmm.
So good. And there was a chapter one morning, I was reading it Sunday morning in bed with a cup of coffee, and my husband came in and I was crying, like tears streaming down my face. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, like, are you okay? What's happened?" And I was like, "I just read about the nitrogen in the companion plants." And there was just this chapter called The Three Sisters, which is an ancient growing technique where you basically grow
Mhm.
squash, um, corn, squash, and beans
Mm.
together. So they're companions, which, like, oh my gosh, the name companion still gets me. And so the corn grows up, the beans grow around the corn, and then the squash keeps shade on the ground so that like weeds don't grow. And then the squash also has something in it, can't remember the science, but that basically gives the beans and the corn extra nitrogen to help them grow bigger, faster, stronger. And I thought that was the most beautiful example of just nature like working together. And I also felt a big deep sadness that not everyone knows this, and this kind of knowledge, we're kind of losing it because so few are now growing their own plants and veg. We are now living often in cities, and it's this knowledge like this that I feel like taps back into, you want to talk about past lives, like taps back into that, like this is how we have, the only reason we've survived, right, is because we've figured out things like this, and that knowledge was passed down and passed down. So that's a long-winded way of saying my favorite thing in my garden is the three sisters. And wow. It's so incredible. When it started growing, I would go into the garden and squeal. Like I'd be like, it's all growing. Wow. It was very exciting.
It's such an amazing story, and I still fascinated by how nature works. Yeah. And I wonder, you told once again, what is the name of the book?
Braiding Sweetgrass.
Got it. I bet I have to read it. And also, did they find how to do it? Like, did human do it, or it was okay? So they did it.
Yeah, so it's been going around for like thousands of years. It's one of the oldest like growing techniques. And the thing is, we don't really grow like that anymore because now food production is like monocrop, right? So there's no corn, beans, and squash. It's like acres and acres of corn, which I can understand because it's more quote unquote efficient. But like, if you look at our garden, it's like chaotic. Like it is, nothing is in a line. Like if anyone has like OCD or wants things in a perfect line, they would get quite stressed out. We've got like flowers growing in amongst like the veg, there's sunflowers, there's strawberries, all growing together. And I just think it's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly, this perfection in imperfection.
Yes.
And what is the hardest plant to grow?
This is going to sound weird, but like I can't grow carrots. I planted so many succession rows of carrots, and we're like 2 months in and they're like this big, like the little, I don't know if it's the climate up here because we're very, very far north. I don't know if it's a climate. I don't know if the seeds weren't good. But the carrots, I just can't seem to grow them.
Maybe you are growing just mini carrots.
Good for hummus, like
super mini carrots,
super like tiny. It's a niche.
Totally. So what is your favorite dish made out of the treasures of your garden?
Ooh. Well, we have courgettes coming out our ears at the moment. I had no idea how fruitful courgette and squash would be. So I'm going multiple times a week and harvesting and just giving them away because there's too many. But something I did the other day, I made them into courgette fritters. So just like courgette, we have like local duck eggs. So that was like the binding agent. Little bit of salt, little bit of pepper, little bit of paprika, and I think I maybe did some Parmesan cheese in there too. And they were delicious. But honestly, every food you get from your own garden is like a gift from the gods. It is like, wow. What I find really interesting is they look nothing like supermarket veg. So I'll actually send you a picture of the courgette we grew. It was like as long as my arm. Wow. And then another one was in a big smiley face, and they're super unique. But I was like, is this how veg is supposed to be? Is it supposed to look unique and not like, think about when you're in a supermarket, everything is identical. Is that how it's supposed to be? I don't know.
Most likely not.
Yeah. Nature, as you said, the perfection is in the imperfection.
I can compare it to people, when you go to some
Mm,
corporate office, you kind of see the same people. At
so
least
true.
previously, I feel like now
Yeah.
it's changing because all of
Yeah.
this understanding of everyone's personality and
Hmm.
empowering all the stuff. But I believe like previously it was like that. I believe it's still like that in some organizations. But people are also different, and it's fun that, you know, we've been taught to act the
Hmm.
same,
Hmm.
and still we are taught to act the same in
Hmm.
most schools and
Yeah.
universities and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I wonder what if everyone would just do what they really love doing.
Hmm.
But I feel like it's I just don't believe in the world like this.
It's a societal shift to get to that, right? It's a systematic. That's not something that happens overnight. That's something that has to change in our education, change in our policy, change in the way that we work. But I think, I don't know, I'm an eternal optimist that I think change does start with us. And even I think it's super depressing when I'm like, I can see all of these problems that I would love to change. Um, and it feels overwhelming and it feels like there's no hope if you think of it on a large scale. But you're like, you know what I can do? I can grow a courgette and
Yeah.
I can give that courgette to someone and I can make their day because it's a hilarious shaped courgette. And that's it's like a micro action. It's not even a blip in the scheme of the world and life and past lives, but it's something. And I think wherever we can, if we can take agency and take control and autonomy over the things that we can do, I mean, that's the only way I have hope. Otherwise,
But
it's very
I feel
depressing.
it sounds for me like a butterfly effect because people are always talking
Yeah.
about like what we hear, that somebody made like millions of donations, somebody
Hmm.
saved like thousands of people, but nobody ever talks about somebody just shared a crochet like it looks like a smile with somebody else and
Exactly.
like made their day like one of the best days of their
Yeah.
lives, and
Yeah.
that's exactly why that person did that. And
Yeah.
you never know
Butterfly.
like how it all connected.
Yeah.
But I believe that if think about that, you can just go out of your mind.
Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, do what you can without without being consumed by it, right? Like just do what you can.
And it's always nice to hear feedback, because I
Mm,
can imagine somebody like 2 years, 5 years later, like messaging, remember that day?
yeah.
That's when my journey started.
Yeah. Oh, so powerful. Very true.
Yeah. And yeah, I just love those moments.
Yeah.
So after the Community Rebellion conference, you
Yeah.
wrote that you ticked this one of the bucket list.
Yeah.
What is the next item on your bucket list?
Ooh. Ooh, good one. Um it's actually it's actually quite a scary one because it's something that I haven't done before. Shock. So I have just agreed to a partnership with the London School of Economics. So they
Mm.
had basically approached me. They are creating the schools program for year 12 students to teach them about what are the skills that these 17-year-olds are going to need to be successful in the future, because those skills aren't the same as they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And when they saw what we were doing at Generalist World, they
Mm.
were like, huh,
Hmm.
these are the kind of skills: adaptability, problem solving, critical thinking, big picture thinking, being able to pivot and reinvent yourself. They were like, can you teach that? Can you package this and teach it? And of course I said, yeah, of course
Sure.
you can. And I'm very lucky that I brought someone from the community in to do it with me. She is a incredible generalist. She's a neuroscientist by trade, turned into an ed tech entrepreneur, turned into a product leader. Her name's Erica. So we've teamed up and we're going to be creating, we're spending next week on it, workshops for year 12 for like school students. And the very outside of my comfort zone, because a lot of what I've been doing is been like tech and community building and very digital. So I'm kind of going into this school and school/academic environment because it's a partnership with LSE. So that will be a pretty incredible thing to be able to present. We've got 3 days over the next between September and November that will be presenting these workshops. And I think that could potentially lead to this whole new other avenue of educating the upcoming generation about these kind of like a generalist approach to life.
Have you ever thought about working with kids before?
Well, I did study it for 3 years. It's quite funny. My husband reminded me of that the other day. He was like, "You've kind of come full circle." And I was like, wow, I hadn't realized that, but you're right. My degree was in primary school, so it was younger children, but I think, the essence is the same. And I think to what we were speaking about earlier about like being the change you want to see in the world, it's like really hard to change systems and organizations and corporations today. I think I'm much more hopeful about being able to impact and influence 17-year-olds who are going to go and launch their own companies. Yeah. They are going to be the CEOs. They are going to be the ones going into parliament and government. And I think it's not a guarantee, but I'm hopeful that by connecting with this younger generation, that it's more of like the long game.
And that's exactly what nobody teaches in school.
Mm-hmm.
Because they always teach you about like mathematics and languages and all the stuff, but and they even try to teach business.
Yeah.
But once again, unless you try, how can you ever even know how to do it?
Yeah, like our workshop, the thing where we haven't fully created it yet, but the kind of theme is going to be like, your job does not exist yet. And that's true. Like most of the jobs that these kids, that your son will be going into, probably don't exist in the way that we understand them. So it's not enough to just be saying, you're going to become X. It's like, well, the future is uncertain. We don't know exactly what skills are going to be in demand, what strengths are going to be in demand. So we need to teach kids how to be able to figure it out, how to be able to problem solve, and how to be able to pivot and reinvent themselves when things will inevitably go wrong.
I hear so many times the word adaptability during like last 2 years, and I feel like that's you never know what might happen next, but if you are ready, you are ready.
Totally.
How did you meet Tommy?
How did I meet Tommy? So I was living out in Bali for a bit. I was creating like a tour out there for one of the tour companies I was working with. And I was living in this really sweet house with I think there might have been like 9 or 10 of us there. It was like a huge house. And I was actually, one of the people living there was his cousin. And so I was really good pals with his cousin, and Tom had come out to visit his cousin. And we hit it off and ended up moving to Australia together. He's Irish, so ended up moving to Ireland and now moving to Rasay together.
How did you know that he's your kind of guy?
I remember saying to my boss at the time that Tom was the funniest person I'd ever met, which counts for something.
Is there a story behind his yellow rubber boots?
You have done your research. So if you were to come to Razé and if you were to go to the distillery, that's just the boots they wear. The distillery all wears these really bright, maybe it's for safety. I don't think it's for street cred. So it's probably for safety somehow. But they all have these yellow gumboots.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great story. And I'm asking not just for ask. I really wish to have those rubber boots too.
Yeah, maybe we can link them in the show notes.
They're just amazing. And also you shared that once you rescued a forgotten bathtub, built it onto bricks, lighted up a fire underneath it, and basin in your front garden. So give me one more example of how you unusually used, at first sight, usual things.
Oh, the bathtub is a good one. We rescued that from the side of the road and turned that into a bathtub. I would say the other one, it's kind of similar, is I made a pond. So I was listening to this podcast about like biodiversity loss. Again, depressing. But my optimistic side was like, what can I do that can help this? And so my first idea was to get, those like little paddling pools that children use.
Yeah.
So originally I was going to use one of them, but I didn't have one. So and we live on this island. No one had one. I actually did post it on our group page. And so the alternative to that was just to dig a hole. And so I spent an entire weekend digging a hole into our garden, lining it with this plastic that was being thrown out at our local walled garden. Although when I started doing it, I realized there was quite a few holes in the plastic. So I had to like tape them up with duct tape. And now we have this beautiful pond where so many insects and like wildlife has moved in. It's very cool.
Do you have any frogs there?
This was a whole ethical debate in my mind because there was frog spawn like all over the island, but I really wanted to move it into the pond so that they would know they can come in. But most of the advice online was that you shouldn't move the frog spawn because at the time my pond it was new, so it wasn't like properly oxygenated, and now I've got like plants in there that I did take from another pond. So now I think that I'm hoping that I might have missed it this year, but next year the frogs will know they can come and hang out, and they're very welcome.
You can do some advertisement.
Yeah.
Frogs are welcome.
Frogs welcome here.
I can imagine you should, create this road with insects lying on the road,
yes.
like so they can just eat.
Yeah, like gingerbread crumbs. Like, come on in.
Yeah, and they're like just the whole pond for them, like VIP pond.
The frogs take over.
It would be nice. So I will definitely follow up you on that next year.
Please do.
And how do you become friends with people?
Ooh, good question. I think I don't know. I think you can learn it, but I think for some it comes quite naturally. I think for me, having good relationships was a necessity because I didn't have this like the parents to kind of lean on. So I knew that like it was in my best interest to be really good at making friends and having these relationships because I'm like, oh, survival. So I think it kind of stems from that. And then through my 20s at becoming a tour guide, I just had a lot of practice, a lot of practice of like every new week there'd be a new tour and there'd be 30 new people to become friends with. So that was 6 years of practicing. And now I think I've gone to the other side of the spectrum where I'm actually really happy with a smaller group that I know deeper. So I kind of had my 20s where I was like friends with everyone and all the friends. And now I'm like, oh, I really like small talk is kind of not so much for me anymore. I find it a bit sad almost, like a bit empty. It makes me feel a bit empty. I'd much prefer to have people around me, less people around me, but where we can just like actually just dig in. Like this conversation is a great example. There's a depth to it, and I think I crave that in my friends at this stage of life.
And I also believe that what you are talking about by saying friends, that's exactly what it is. It's not like having a quick conversation, because those are just, it's not right word to say, but audience, kind of.
Yeah, I
And
know what you
I believe
mean.
that friends, it's those who are really talking to, who, and even those who you can call, I don't know, 1 year later, even if you didn't have
Of
conversation for
course.
1 year, you can
Yeah.
just continue from the moment you stopped, you know.
I think it's also about modeling it. So like if you how do you make friends? I think by being good friend. Like if you can be that person, then people will probably, not always, but probably return that same like respect and love.
And the hardest question is how to be a good friend, you know.
Yeah. Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
we'll leave it up to everyone to think
Yeah.
about it themselves.
Yeah.
Because I believe that
Big
there is
one.
no one answer, definitely. And you know, I also even believe that what might be a great advice for somebody won't work for
Yeah,
others. Totally.
absolutely. Yeah, it's very true.
You know, I really, really wish to have the sky as the limit to our conversation, and I have so many questions to ask, but time is the limit.
Yeah.
So let's jump to the rapid fire questions.
Oh, okay.
Sea or mountains?
C.
Whiskey in winter or wine in summer?
Wine in summer.
What are your favorite color and song?
Favorite color is yellow. Favorite song, um, can I just do like a favorite artist is Genobi. He's like a Portuguese DJ, and I had the greatest night of my life. Just came across him, and if I'm ever down, I can just play some Genobi, and I feel fantastic. So um, that's cheating, but all of Genobi stuff.
And welcome to the yellow color team, because
Yeah.
usually it's it's just statistics, but
Are
usually
you yellow too?
always yes.
Heck yeah.
But usually it's
Oh,
green and blue.
really?
We are talking to community people, it's green and blue. So welcome to the
Interesting.
yellow team.
Interesting. There could be some studies done around this.
Hey, you never know, maybe one day. If
Yeah.
if you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
Um, it's I've thought about this, and I always get stuck, and I can't decide between being able to speak every language in the world or being able to speak to every animal or insect or bee in the world, because I can never fully decide which one I would like more. I think maybe the people. I think I would maybe go the language.
But you know, technically, animals also have languages.
Do. Oh my
So,
gosh. Do you know who we just had staying with us? So we use the website Warm Showers, which is
mhm.
like for basically like couch surfing for cyclists. And we just had a couple of people staying with us last week. And one of the women, she's a neuroscientist who studies the brains of birds
Wow.
to better understand language in humans, because it's the same part of the brain. You should have seen our dinner conversation. You would have loved it. We should have dialed you in for that. We had her, and the other guy was an astrophysicist. So he studied like the physics of space.
Oh my God. You know, I can't even imagine what kind of conversation did you have.
Deep,
But I feel like,
deep.
wow,
It was
lucky
amazing.
you, lucky
Yeah,
you.
very lucky. Totally.
Tell me just a little more about connection of bird's brain to human brains.
Um, okay, I will try. So the part of the brain that birds use and the part of the brain that humans use to process language is the same part. And I'm not sure exactly why it's easier to understand it in birds. Maybe the brain is
Mm,
smaller.
yeah.
Um, but they're really interested in studying it. So especially if someone has like neurodiversity or like language problems, language like obstacles and challenges, they believe that the answer could be more easily found potentially in the brains of these birds.
Oh,
So
wow.
she studies this one particular type of bird. It was a something finch, and spends all her day studying their brain. It's amazing.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for sharing that. It's
Yeah.
wow, great. And who do you learn from in the community world? Name just one person.
Oh, that's so hard because instantly
Exactly.
just then my brain went like it's
Just
no
just
if you were
just first. Just
okay.
first.
Okay, the first is Rosie Sherry. Rosie was the one I first came across. She has been my like Bible of knowledge. But I'm gonna sneak in because she needs to be plugged. Etcher, who was the first person I hired for Generalist World. She and I learn from her every day. She is just a natural community builder, and I'm so grateful that I got to have her work as a part of the team. So Rosie was my original, and then Etcher is my like everyday.
Can you imagine? Rosie was my guide to international community world too.
Ah,
And Roseland was the first email I ever signed up. And that's how I
wow,
found CMX and other communities. And
amazing.
also, it was the first community-related conversation I ever had with English-speaking person. It was Rosie
Wow.
Sherry.
Wow. I'm
So
not surprised. I'm not surprised. Rosie is a wealth of knowledge, and she's so generous in sharing that knowledge, which is like the epitome of a community builder. Um,
totally.
yeah.
And name two people who I should definitely invite to have this conversation.
Etcher, number one. Um, and I think that another interesting one, someone in our community, actually I met her at Community Rebellion. Her name's Nicola. Nicola Earle. Maybe you met her too.
Mm,
I'm not
yeah.
sure, but she's now a part of Generalist World, and she's doing some really interesting things. She's actually, I believe, just launching a local community initiative. I just saw it actually today. She went live, so that could be really interesting to have her on too.
Definitely. And is there one question that I should have asked you but didn't?
Ooh, I think you asked incredible questions, Yuri. I think this is one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. So no, I don't think there is anything. Is there more we could talk about? Yes, but the time is the limit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's always so hard, but I'm always preparing for the volume too.
Yeah,
So one day we'll definitely do it, and just get ready for this.
yeah.
And yes, Milly, thank you very much for this amazing conversation. And you know, like my history, how I found about you, like definitely first of all, I've heard about you on LinkedIn. I
Hmm.
read some posts and
Hmm.
I liked them very much, and other people were talking about you. And then we finally met in this real life, in real
Yeah.
life. And I don't know, but I definitely I know. I learned so much from you, and
Oh.
I'm just, I had previous community life conversation with Peter Wanderwooder, and
Hmm.
he told that Milly is an amazing person. I was like, yeah, sure. And it's so great to learn from your experience, and you have such an amazing experience, and also such fun experience. So that's exactly what you told in the beginning, about stories. And I just
Yeah.
love how you share your story, the story of your life, and what happens with you, and all what you are doing. And I feel like I'm getting closer to join generalists world. So just few more points,
Yeah.
just few more touch points, and
Well, you're welcome anytime. And thank you so much. This has been really, really, really fun. It's been
yeah,
awesome.
see you in the community world.
Sounds great. Bye.
And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button or 5 stars and share it with your friend. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.